So when I got started with this work, about 20% of our units were studying anything, and that's including a satisfaction survey. That's pretty low. And there were some key reasons that people gave. Some people thought that measuring our work was actually disloyal to the profession of student affairs. And that seems really kind of ridiculous. But what they said was, by measuring, we're not listening to the full student. And that was an assertion that was made quite strongly. There were others that said, well, this is in addition to my real work, and I really need to get back to my real work. And then there were some others, and this was kind of the third wave of people that I spoke with. They were the ones that kind of hung in the back of the room and didn't ask at first. You know. The people who want to tell you just hell no are always right up front with that. But then there were people that said, I just don't know how. I don't have the skill. I did my master's degree 30 years ago. I don't have the tools. I don't know how to do this. Those were the winning people, because the next phrases out of their mouth were, I want to learn. Can you help me? I'm curious about this. And the more they talked, the more we could talk about, wow, you really are sitting on a pile of data. You really are sitting on a lot of knowledge right now. How do we unfold that? We started the research symposium in 2004 specifically with those people in mind, because we're talking about smart people, we're talking about leaders. They just want to know how to do one more thing. They want to be role models in the ways that we ask students to take risks and take chances and learn. And that's really exciting. So we started a research symposium with the idea that we're not just going to show pretty results, although we like pretty results, but we're going to show research and assessment at every stage of creation. So we're going to show some things at the point that we're building a research design. We're going to show some things at the point that we're doing analysis and actually invite the audience into analysis. We're going to have sessions where we're just battling over what the research question is, because it's hard to ask good research questions about student growth. That's just hard work. But the people who wanted to know how to do this were the inspiration for the future work ahead. And that was a joy. So the important thing to keep in mind is that when we are saying something meaningful about the work that we do in student life, we are saying that student life work itself is meaningful. And that's critical. When we can't say that there's anything we do that moves the needle for a student, that calls into question why we do what we do. So, student life has worked quite a bit over the last 14 years to up its game. And we've upped our game to such a substantial level that people come to us to learn how students learn. People come to us to learn how to teach in some cases. The integrative learning is a perfect example, and it's not the only one where we are teaching how to teach. We are teaching how to measure how students learn. And we're sharing elements of data about how students grow. A lot of things come through us. How people achieve careers or make decisions about careers in the months immediately following the degree. What income levels students come in with. First generation status comes through our area. A lot of the elements in between. These are critical elements that we provide now. And it's because of lots of little pieces of all the work of all these areas that happens. It's not one person. It's not one effort. It's everybody. And all of us as a team are creating leadership as student life to teach others how to teach and how to learn. So one of the most interesting things about this is that all of this challenges the notion that objective data, hard data, is neutral. Because hard data is not neutral. Little numbers by themselves are not neutral. People make the decisions about what counts and what doesn't. And we have to argue like hell for what counts. And one of the most important things about that is arguing about the role of the student being involved in the measurement of that student's learning. We don't get to shove students into test tubes. That gets messy, test tubes get broken, then you have a risk management hazard. Students have to be engaged in the measurement of how they're learning. If they are not engaged, we really aren't getting the full picture of how they're learning. So you can have a lot of little bits of data and not have a full story. All of these little bits, we can stack them up, we can build a building, but it will not stand without all the intervening pieces that go with it. So I lived this as a very visceral example a couple of years ago. I had gone through a substantive weight loss process. I lost 117 pounds. Thank you. Still trying to keep it lost. It keeps trying to find me. But I went for a health screening and in the midst of this health screening, I relayed some other symptoms because I was at the lowest weight I had been since junior high school, but I was having some dizziness and I was having some tingling in my lips and my extremities. Somehow this doesn't seem normal. And so I relayed this to my screener, and my screener looked at my height and my weight and looked at her chart and said, you know what the problem is? You're a little bit overweight. And if you lost a few pounds, I think everything would be okay. I said, well, I'm familiar with losing some pounds. But somehow this dizziness seems wrong. So somehow these other symptoms don't seem like they should come with a package of health and wellness. And her response to me was that it was my thinking that was the problem. Now, I will agree with her on one thing, that there was a problem in my head, but I will argue it was the dizziness and not my thinking. What this drove home was that she was looking at two bits of data, height and weight, and making a decision, making a generalization about what I should be, ignoring all aspects of fitness, of workout, as well as these physical symptoms. I'm trying to understand my health based on two pieces of data is ridiculous. And our wellness educators in the room would speak chapter and verse about that. The important thing was to understand the whole story, and it drove home this piece about bits of data not being the full story. So when we're talking about issues of climate and engagement across the university, we have to be very careful not to have that categorized as individual bits of data too. We have to be very careful that we're talking about a full story, including the moments when the data looks like that there's been some backsliding. Because sometimes our students need to regress a little bit to make great progress. If we looked at the little bits of data right in the middle of the work, that's messy, that's ugly, and it might look like we did some damage, when in reality, students are clearing the decks for some great new learning ahead. So what we're talking about is studying all the work across student life and really putting it all together as a meaningful whole. So when we talk about learning outcomes, we don't expect every area to study every learning outcome. We don't expect every area to study the obvious. So we could have areas that look like they're multicultural areas, and they are. But they're studying leadership and wellness because all of this weaves together, all of it matters together. We could have areas that look like leadership, and they're doing a deep dive on inclusive excellence. We could have areas that look like wellness, and they too are studying how to be a reflective learner. Because all of that weaves together. We don't ignore one part when we go into another. Sometimes we're leaning into the thing that looks least obvious when we're putting this all together as student life. That's the exciting part of what we do. We're all in each other's business, and that's pretty amazing. So, in the midst of this last decade and a half that I've been doing this, students and others have been taking data into their own hands and creating documentaries about themselves and trying to make meaning for themselves. So part of our work as Student Life now is not just to create our own data and to interpret our own data and tell our own story, but to help students understand their own story. So we hear about quantified self, and a lot of students, a lot of us are participating. So any of us with a Fitbit on, you're being a part of that. Collecting your steps, your sleep, your not 8.6 hours of sleep. You might use Lose It to record your food, to understand your nutrition. I tend to tweet my workouts from Runkeeper, much to some of your annoyance if you're on Twitter. We're putting it all together and trying to make meaning for ourselves. And the students are doing the same thing. The students are doing that at an even higher level because sometimes they're playing with more toys than we have time to do. That's part of the privilege of their time. And so we're not only trying to gather information about learning, we're trying to teach people how to assess, including how to self-assess. And that's a pretty special moment. So far what we know is that we are awesome. Ask any of us at Michigan, we're awesome. We graduate students at above a 90% graduation rate. We're making a lot of things happen. And again, if we look at one piece of the pie, we're awesome. And we should celebrate a 90% graduation rate because no matter how you slice it, that's a really nice thing. We also need to think at all times when we're looking at something like this, that not every student is benefiting evenly from that. And we need to start thinking about who are the students who are not benefiting so greatly, and how can we reach them, and how can they have the same level of promise that everybody else has? How can they be engaged in all of the awesome? So that's a lot of the work that we're doing.